welcome to Tucson Community News. I'm Lynn Rollison. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Universe. Actually, we have Nordine Zouareg, who holds that celebrated title. Nordine helps children in the community along with Carondelet Health Network through their youth sexuality program. He is here today to share his story about achieving his goals and to talk about how he helps kids achieve theirs. Welcome, Nordine. It's such a pleasure having you on my show this morning. Nordine, you were a child that was never supposed to be, and you have a very inspiring story. Can you start with that?
Absolutely. First, I'd like to apologize if you don't understand completely because I have a French accent, so I want to apologize for that. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. I was born in the back of a truck from a Lebanese father and a nomad mother.
Which it was unheard of.
Exactly. The reason why I was born in the truck is because the French army took the tribes, nomad tribes, to put them in cities. And in the truck was my mom, my father, my grandfather, God bless his soul, and my grandmother. And so when they packed everybody in the truck, my mother was pregnant. She was waiting for to deliver. Mm-hmm. And so on the way to the city, in the middle of a desert, she started to have pains. And so my father started to be really nervous about it and didn't know what to do, almost collapsed. My grandmother started to pray, and it's very interesting when my parents tell me the story. And my grandfather left my grandfather who could really do something about it. And so here was, he delivered me with a little knife and put me around his rope. My father was knocking on the window for the soldier to stop the truck, but they didn't. Later, they finally stopped and realized what was going on, blood everywhere in the truck. And so they decided to go to the hospital. And when they got to the hospital, I was checked in. They checked in, and the same night, the doctor, when my mom was asleep, took my destiny in his hands.
Because you were sick.
Because I had the ricket. Because I was sick, and I was so. My grandfather, when he used to tell me the story, he said I was no bigger than an apple. Wow. And so the doctor saw my mom at the time. My mom was 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And so when he saw that, he wondered, why my mother would bother with a baby like that. So took my destiny in his hands and put me in a mortuary. Your
father did this?
No, the doctor.
The doctor, okay.
And so when my mother woke up instantly, in the middle of the night and was looking for me. She didn't find me. You know how mother wake up in the middle of the night when they have a new baby. And so she was running around and asking everybody, nurses and everything. And one of the nurses couldn't, she was guilty. She felt guilty. Told my mom that the doctor have put me in a mortuary.
And she found you? She
went to the mortuary, and she found me, and she told me that I was almost blue, and I was playing, like a little baby, naked. Of course, and so she decided to take me, of course, and went to the doctor who did this, and in the hospital, and he explained to her that the reason he did this is because she had time to have kids. She was too young to have kids, and she was beautiful. She could have other kids in the future. And so she decided to get out of the hospital. And from there, went to see my father, and they decided to take me to France. And when they got to France, the doctor told them that it was best to put me in long-term care in a hospital where I could stay a long time because my situation needed to be treated this way. So I stayed in the hospital. They took me to, they were advised to take me to Switzerland. And they checked me in the hospital. I stayed there 2 years. I had the visit of my parents one time because it was too expensive to fly, to travel, or take the train.
So you were in the hospital until you were 2 years old?
Mm-hmm.
And part of this, of what you went through, is why you decided to work with kids today, correct?
Absolutely,
Nordine?
absolutely. Because in the future, when I got out of the hospital, started to go to school and everything, I developed some kind of low self-esteem. I didn't like myself. I was projecting it towards other kids, and it's like walking, you know, with a big board saying, you can beat me up, you can treat me the way you want because I have a low self-esteem, I don't like myself.
What age did that change?
Well, I started feeling that when I was around 10 years old, you know. Before that, I was lucky to have still my grandparents around. They would take care of me, and because my parents started to their new life in France, and so they worked, and so I was, you know, fine until 10 years old. The reason for that, again, I was underweight, and at 19 years old, I weighed 108 pounds.
Wow, that's not very much.
No, not at all.
You started gymnastics also, right? You started
Absolutely.
competing in gymnastics. Did that
Yes.
change your life, Nordine?
Yes, I was amazed by watching television. I saw this awesome athlete performing, and being very skinny, I was really, I loved that. I wanted to be like that. And I took a decision. They say behind every low self-esteem, there's a great esteem. And I was hunting for that great esteem.
Nordine, how do you look at our youth in our country compared to Europe and other countries?
Well, I've been here for a few years now, to be precise, 4 years. And in the beginning, I didn't understand one thing, is how could kids have respect in themselves and develop themselves spiritually and physically if they don't see no respect? There's no respect, no values in these kids.
Okay, we're going to end right there,
Okay.
and we have to take a break, but we'll be right back. We'll be right back after these messages. Hi, and welcome back to Tucson Community News. My guest this morning is Mr. Universe, Nordine Zouareg. Before we went to a break, we were talking about values in kids, respect. Let's carry on with that.
Well, values, I think values straight come from your parents. Your parents should be the direct role model for kids out there who are emphasizing on having other people being their role models.
We were talking about that before we started,
Absolutely.
about how the Michael Jordans and
There's
the Dennis
nothing wrong with
Rodmans
that.
are role models, but it should be our parents.
Really, it should be first, when you really think about it, your parents. Like, that's what really got me out of my low self-esteem. And I was searching for something that it was in me, was more spiritual. And in an early age, I learned to be spiritual with my parents. When you think about nomads have nothing but their spirits. Mm-hmm. And so I was brought up that way. And if you look at your parents and they're doing something good for you, they are teaching you the right manners and what you should really emphasize on. To me, it's a great thing. Mm-hmm. And I always look up to my parents until now.
Who was your role model?
My parents.
And they still are today?
They are going to be all until I die.
You know, I have to tell our audience this. Some people might look at you, as we were talking off camera, as just, you know, a person that lifts weights and was Mr. World, Mr. Europe, Mr. Universe. But you actually, Nordine, you have your master's degree.
Absolutely.
You speak 5 languages. I mean, you've accomplished so much.
And that's because I had good role models, which are my
And you
parents.
had the desire.
And the desire. You know, when you have good manners, believe me, you develop the good will to do things that are first and valuable in your life.
Nordine, when you go into the schools and speak, which you're doing in our community, what do you see as the biggest problem with kids today?
The kids are lost.
Why?
They don't acknowledge that they are human beings. They are beings. They have values. They have they're worth something. They think they are worth nothing. For instance, one of the kid, I asked a question and told him, what are your desire to be in the future? What you want to be? And this kid, 12 years old, told me that he wanted to be a part-time drinker and wanted to own his own liquor store.
A part-time drinker.
So when you really think about it, when you analyze the question and the answer, you can see that this kid is surrounded by people who are drinkers, who are his role models. We can, in this case, think maybe his parents, maybe his brothers and sisters. And so we come back to the question you asked me. Who are your role models? My parents.
So maybe you need to be speaking to the parents and not the kids.
Absolutely. The parents need to sit down and really focus on the question, are we good role models? That should be their affirmation every day. And that's the only way they can do something about getting the kids back back on track.
We were talking before we started, and we talked about values.
Absolutely.
What are values to you?
Values, well, love comes first, and then respect. And from those two words, you can develop other ways of life. Values is when you look at yourself in the mirror and you say to yourself, today I am going to treat myself and treat everybody good. Values is when you see your parents doing something good for you, and you return the favor by doing something good for them. Values are when you start a relationship with a person, you start respecting the person for what she represents, what she is, and not what she's making in life. It can be material, it can be money, and that's, you know, disappearing in the world, I should say. But America is number one in that. Material is a big thing here, and
Very
so therefore values are disappearing. You should really look at the person for what the person is inside, not in the outside.
And a lot of respect is gone in our
Absolutely.
youth. They don't respect their parents,
No.
their elders, like we were brought up to
They
do.
lost because they lost hope. They lost hope. The parents are showing a negative message, and the kids do not want to see that negative message. So they turn their back to their parents and go elsewhere to find that motivation. And motivation can be alcohol. Motivation can be drugs to them.
It can be anything.
Anything bad. Because the parents were not there in the first place. Believe me, if you have a kid early in your early age, if you teach that kid the good values and love, send him a good positive message, you'll have a good kid in life.
They'll carry it on.
Absolutely.
For our audience, do you have a number that they can call if they would like you to come speak to maybe their church group, to schools?
Yeah, they can call me directly on this number, 1-800-298-3837. And also they can call Carondelet Hospital and ask for Kathy Bale.
Okay.
It's family planning, and she'll be very delighted to organize something for the schools and whoever wants to hear about me speaking for the kids.
For hope.
For hope. Yes.
Nordine, thank you very much.
Thank
It was
you.
such a pleasure
Thank you for your
talking
time.
to you this morning.
Thank you.
And good luck to you. God bless you. We'll be right back after these messages. you.